Wine can be really confusing. When you're starting out, it's hard to tell high-quality wine from a bottle of plunk. It can also get really expensive. Boy, have I found that out lately by looking at my bank statements. I did a lot of research to find a better way to buy quality wine without breaking the bank, and that's how I discovered an awesome website called Last Bottle Wines. Last Bottle Wines has fostered personal relationships with wineries across the world and offer one bottle of high-quality wine a day at 30 to 70% off. When the bottle is gone, it's gone. New day, new bottle, new savings. I recently ordered a Spanish Tempranillo. This wine normally retails for $74, and I got it from Last Bottle Wines for only $32. It's not a wine club, so there's no fees. Shipping is affordable and can even be free. You know Mason and I are always after the best wines at the best price. We want you to enjoy the same deal. That's why we got you this special offer. Some of our listeners have already taken advantage of the deal and are loving the experience. All you need to do is go to lastbottlewines.com/invite/tastinganarchy to get $10 off your first purchase while helping your favorite Wine and Liberty podcast. That's lastbottlewines.com/invite/tastinganarchy to get $10 off a delicious bottle of wine at 30 to 70% off. Tasting Anarchy, your Wine and Liberty podcast. Join Mason and Jake each week as they try new wines and discover how much government is in your drink.
So, Jake, what's in your glass tonight?
Well, Mason, as you and I were discussing earlier, we decided to go with two Pinot Noirs from roughly the same area, and you know, I've got a pretty big stock now of wine, and so when you find something, I can find something probably close to it or around where it is, or at least right now
Adjacent.
I can. Yeah, and so what I went with was, and I've been really looking forward to opening this up. It's from Lutum. It's Lutum. They're very famous for making good wine, I guess, in California. And it's from the Gaps Crown Vineyard. It's a Pinot Noir, 2013. 13.9% alcohol by volume, which seems a little high for a Pinot Noir to me. But I just don't drink Pinot Noir that often, so I don't know for sure. Normally, this is the part that you and I get most excited about. Normally, it's $60 a bottle.
Yes.
And over on, which I'll be doing a plug for this later on, I can't pull it up on my phone, but, what did I tell you that website that I'm using now is?
Hang on. I'll pull it up in the notes.
Yeah, what is it? I can't even say it, but I
Vivino? Or
Vivino?
Vivino, yeah.
Is that how you say it? Vivino. Vivino.
Yeah.
So I've been using this Vivino app a lot lately to keep track of what bottles of wine I have and what ones I don't have. So they're saying it's $60 a bottle. When I got it from Last Bottle Wines, I think Last Bottle was saying that it normally goes for $75, but Last Bottle does like 3 listings. They'll say like, this is what it normally goes for in stores. This is what we can find it online at, and this is what we're selling at. So they sold it at $35 a bottle.
That's a pretty good rating. It's like, look, this is like when we contacted the original seller to be supplied with this. This is their suggested retail price. This is what we can find it online for, and this is what we're going to sell it to you for. So
right, yeah, and this
got
is
on Last Bottle.
Yeah, I'm very pleased, very pleased with this Pinot Noir, and like I said, I've been looking forward to opening it up. I got like 4 or 5 bottles of Pinot Noir from them, different ones during that marathon. And this was one of the ones I was especially looking forward to. And it's from the central coast of Sonoma. So it's near where yours is from, but not exactly where yours is from.
Correct.
And like I said, it's from the Gaps Crown Vineyard. I'll go ahead and give my review of the taste and flavor. I kind of wanted to start getting back to a little bit of that, of like the more, I wouldn't say strict, but a more strict review of the flavors.
Yeah, giving people a better idea of what we're actually drinking.
Yeah, because I've been going back and reviewing our notes, and like I noticed that for some reason at some point I just kind of stopped putting in what I thought of the wine, and and I don't know why. Like it was just like one week I'm doing it, and the next week I just don't have those notes anymore. It's just facts about the wine. So this is what I liked about it. So the color was a very, very pleasant pale red, and you know, one of the things that I learned about from Elizabeth at Wine for Normal People is that if you hold the wine, you know how like people in like on TV and stuff, they hold up to the light and they're like, "Ooh, yeah, this looks nice," or whatever. She says, "No, that's not really how you do it. What you do is you have a white piece of paper or a white napkin or something, and you hold it behind it and sort of tilt it over that and let the light pass through it. And that's sort of how you get a clear representation of what the color is. And this has a very, very pleasant red, well, not to confuse it with Burgundy, the wine, but kind of a very burgundy color, but clear. So you can see right through it.
So, you know the birthstone of Garnet?
Yeah, I would say Garnet. That's probably a good description.
Yeah, I think a lot of noirs kind of have a garnet color.
Yeah, it is. It's very pretty, but it has like a little bit of that hint of brown, like Garnet has. So I like it. So visually very appealing. The smell, vanilla and cherry. A smaller amount of floral notes, but it does have a pretty strong flavor, and what I mostly get out of it is like dark red cherry and vanilla. So again, one of the other things that I've been really liking lately about wine is I can just kind of sit and watch TV with my wife or whatever, and just kind of like sniff my wine for a long time, because it's just kind of fun to do. It smells really good. Over time, one thing I also learned about is like when you smell at the top of the wine glass versus the bottom when it's tilted toward your face, you pick up different things in different places, because the density of the particles that are coming off of the wine, which is what gives you the smell, are different. So some of them will sink and some of them will go higher, which is
that
neat.
makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, and it's really interesting to see how different it is by this like a 2-inch distance.
Yeah, it'd be really, so like not to derail our show, but like seeing somebody like a wine expert that wasn't against beer, kind of how they would approach tasting a beer. Yeah. And kind of seeing like the different, because like, okay, if I consume it over this rate, if I let it sit, and then the smelling distance, like, which is a really interesting idea and makes total sense. Yeah. And like, does like beer have that many, like, it's not that volatile is not the right word for it in wine, but like, kind of those reactive chemicals that are producing right, like the additional smells and stuff like that. Because we all know beer has a smell. Yeah. But like, obviously like on barley wines or like the super heavy quads and things like that have like really unique brewing processes, or lambics, they definitely would have that. But it's like, oh, here's a standard IPA. Yeah.
What would that be like? Well, speaking of, I guess, sort of standard IPAs, well, this will derail it too, but I think you and I have talked about it. I got a special IPA for you and me to try at Childeberg. Yes. That's really cool. It's an Imperial American IPA. But it's brewed in Italy, which is super interesting. So I think it'll be interesting. You and I we got so much stuff to do reviews of. I don't know if we're going to get to all of it, because we'll be just too hammered if we do everything. But anyways, back to this wine. So the taste, I think it's very strong red fruit, in particular strawberry. So for me, strawberry, I usually sort of separate strawberry out, because it's a much, not to describe this as sweet because it is a dry wine, but strawberry does sort of remind me of sweetness a little bit more than like plum, for example. So
yeah, but strawberry is like a tomato, where like tomato is technically a fruit. Strawberry is technically not a berry. It's technically a fruit. I mean, like, there's all that stuff. Yeah. But like a raspberry, a cherry, dark red plums. Yeah. Most red fruits are not like a strawberry and like a tomato. Like they're not like each other necessarily, but like a strawberry is like a different, like completely different. Whereas like, apples, like, there are a lot of different apples, but like apples all on its own. Like you don't go like, the apple like fruits. Yeah, no, it's apple. Strawberry is its own thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it does have that dark red cherry and the plum flavors as well, but the strawberry is really pronounced in it. So I think that was very good. It's also got, particularly after I let it sit for a little while, a lot of tobacco, a lot of oakiness, a lot of vanilla. It's a little bit spicy, but very, very, very low spicy. Almost not tannic at all. It's very light bodied. But it does have an acidity a little bit. It does make your mouth water, but it's more of like staying power. The acidity is more of like what remains after you take a sip. So it's just kind of like, that's what lingers, is this sort of acidicness, and you do have sort of a mouth wateriness to it.
Yeah. So it's how it coats the palate.
Yeah. It's very good. I like it a lot. And I learned some interesting things when I was looking up and trying to figure out, what I wanted to talk about on the show a little bit for this wine. And one of the things that they sort of present on the website is that it is picked at 2 a.m., the Pinot Noir stuff. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they pick at night. And when you go look it up, there's actually very good reasons for it. Apparently at night in the grapes, there's a chemical process that happens and the sugars stabilize. So if you pick during the day, the sugars are going to be different and the composition changes, and that makes it so that undesirable wild yeasts will sometimes start working on the grapes before you're ready. So if you pick at night when they're a little more stable and it's a little cooler, you save on that. It's also, there's no bugs or snakes out at night usually, or fewer bugs and snakes out. And and in places like, you know, in Northern California, there's rattlesnakes and stuff like that. And you don't want to be in the fields when there's going to be snakes out there sunbathing all over the place. And, you know, wasps are not out there, and wasps love grapes. And, you know, a lot of the biting bugs and stuff like that, they're usually asleep or dormant or whatever at that time. So they bring out these very large lamps. They set them up and people just go to town at long lines of harvesters, and they just harvest at night, and that's how they get it. It also apparently saves the wine, the wherever you store the grapes. It saves them money because they have to cool the grapes down to a certain temperature for them to be stored. And if they're cooler already, you're using less energy to reduce the temperature.
It's kind of so one of the things that I've wanted to kind of look into is these, you know, like people are like, oh, and during the day when you're not at home, you should turn your house up to like, you know, some ridiculously high temperature and then have it start to chill before you come home. And I've always wondered, like, where's the thermal trade-off?
Yeah.
Like, you know, keeping it at a cooler temperature throughout the day by just dumping more air conditioning into it compared to, like, heat loss because of trying to maintain this lower temperature. But it's like, okay, well, how well insulated do you have to be before it becomes, letting it, thermal change, like gain that thermal mass?
Yeah. So, well, and this actually is similar to, but there's two in that area or whatever. The same sort of thing is with whole house fans, especially whole house fans with geothermal, is that you turn the whole house fan on it, and by just basically using the fan or using the idea that hot air rises, as it rises and goes out the vents on the top of your house, that pressure change pulls in cool air from the piping underneath your house, if you have a geothermal system, and then you can use this kind of passive thermal exchange to pull cooler air into your house during a hot day, and then at night shut it down. And the same thing with, like, when you're driving on the freeway versus driving in town, it takes a lot less gas to maintain this freeway speed if you can go without stopping than it does to be going 25 miles an hour but start and stop, start and stop, start and stop.
Yeah, coming to a complete rest, but compared to it's the conservation of momentum principle. Right. Yeah, like my house, like there's clearly a spot where there was a whole house fan originally before they built all the extension and stuff onto it. Like there was a whole house fan, and a lot of them in this area had it. But yeah, so according to the site for the wine I have, it was also harvested at night.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
That's neat. I wonder if that's really common and you and I are just now finding out about it.
I think it is and it isn't.
Or it might be for specific grapes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, we've looked at different ones, and I think a few things we've listened to or read kind of indicated like different harvesting times and things like that. So, and I can't remember his name at the moment, but the biodynamic guy.
Oh, Craig Camp.
Like, yeah, I'd like to see, kind of, that'd be something to explore with him maybe on a future episode is, because he has so much experience.
Right.
Like, do you see a practical benefit of harvesting at night? Do you only harvest at night? Have you never harvested at night? Kind of get that idea.
I know that, I don't know if this is part of his practice because, there's a lot of mystique around biodynamic, and he sort of, in that interview, which people can go back and listen to it, I thought it was very good. I think it's episode like 68 or 69, I think, was the episode. But one of the things he says, well, biodynamic is a certification that you can get, and there's a lot of things involved with it that are more guidelines rather than rules. And one of the guidelines that I've read about is that you harvest in accordance with a lunar cycle. So. And he pointed this out. He said, look, it does sound kind of weird or whatever, but just like there's tides, the moon and the way that the gravity of the moon pools on all fluids is going to have some effect on grapes, when it's very, very important for grapes not to be full of water when you're harvesting them. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they burst, they're too watery, you're making a diluted wine, there's other factors involved. So I'm sure that as a biodynamic grower, he probably does pool or take into account temperature. And actually in the I guess when this comes out, it'll probably be 2 episodes ago, but when I was interviewing Rowdy, who's a grape grower here in Texas, is temperature plays a huge factor into him as well, into how he makes decisions as well, because in Texas there's a different clock that you're fighting, and that is how long can you, I think it's called bricking, how long can you leave the grapes on the vine before you have to harvest them? Because if you're leaving them out in the sun for a really long time, they're developing more and more and more and more sugar. Like I think he was saying, I have to go back and listen to the episode, but I think he was saying his Malbec is like 16% ABV, which is super high. And he says, but it's great. It tastes very good. It's a really good one. That higher alcohol, from what I understand, high alcohol wines don't preserve as well unless they're also very, very tannic. So I'm not sure how that works, but you can have a very high alcohol wine that's young and that is outstanding. And
I kind of wonder if Texas wines are kind of more like the French idea, where they're meant to not maybe necessarily age so long because of the heat and the risk of the over sugaring and things like that.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably true, and it's also, though, one of the big challenges, as he was pointing out in Texas, is that inconsistency in harvest. You have no idea what it's going to be like from year to year. He was saying like last year or the year before, he had like 9 inches of snow randomly, and he says like maybe we get a half an inch a year, and then this year we got 9. And he's like, you just never know. And they have to have these gigantic. They're like basically like big fans that go up there and like cool the air so that instead of it creating a frost, it cools the air above so that it'll drop. And then, but the cooler air that's dropping is warmer than the air that's down at the ground, so it'll prevent frost from attaching to the grapes and killing them and causing frost damage.
Rising. Right. That's a really interesting practice.
Yeah.
The guy in Marfa that you worked with.
Yeah, Ricky.
Ricky, this is one of those ones where you kind of got to tell him about that. Mm-hmm.
Well, he had a loss of a couple of little seedlings, not from the year that I planted, but the previous year he planted some, and some of them did survive. But the majority of the ones he put in the first year died because they were dead on delivery. So, but he said that they did have a late frost just randomly, and it killed a lot of the buds. And when it kills buds on plants that are that young, it kills the plant. Yeah,
it's a huge shock to the system.
Right. So he lost 2 or 3 vines because of that late frost, and that's something that does happen. Once the plants are a little more mature, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal if they bud and then it frosts, because now you're going to lose a large percentage of your harvest. So you got to prevent that from happening. That was one of the things Ricky was talking or not Ricky, I'm sorry, Rowdy was talking about, was just one of the things that Texas grapples with is inconsistency. But where this Pinot Noir that I'm drinking is from, and the Pinot Noir that you're about to review, this is one of the advantages that California has over a lot of places, is that from year to year, it's very rare that there's unexpected weather.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's always kind of shocked me about how consistent California weather is. But that's also one of those things, it's like, Virginia has pretty consistent weather. But then, we've also had, not this winter, but like last winter we had, and the winter before that we had big snow events that we normally don't have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it can be really. Oh, that's weird. I don't know why my phone started talking to me.
Something about grandma.
Yeah, it was some advertisement. Something about a girl getting a phone for her grandma so she could take pictures of her grandma. I was like, okay. Well.
Grandma's a stalker.
Yeah, but that is it is a really interesting thing about California. So why don't you get into your wine a little bit more?
So, well, at all. No. So I have Mark West Pinot Noir Russian River Valley Vintage 2015. So this is one of those things where, I go to Kroger a lot, and Kroger usually has, at least on a larger size Kroger, the one we go to is the Marketplace Kroger, they have a pretty extensive wine selection. And, nothing compared to Total Wine or like an actual wine shop, but they have a fairly extensive selection. And every year they kind of have this thing where, like, in the wine area, there's what I call the discount rack, or, you know, people have seen on the site, like Tales from the Discount and things like that. That's where I go in and buy, like, discounted wine from them. So they also have a complete other area of the store where they put, like, everything that's on discount. So, you know, if you accidentally drop, like, the can of peas in the aisle and it's all dented, that's where they put it. You know, like, mark it down to 69 cents. Somebody will buy it.
Yeah.
So they do that with the wine. So I was in there, and one of the things that I've been very interested in getting was a Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Which
is not necessarily something you're going to find at Kroger, but I always look and see, you know, hey, what am I going to find? So last week we got a Cab Franc that I'm going to do a mini episode on, hopefully in the next week or so, because I've opened it. I need to finish it, but I'm not ready to review it tonight. But I opened, you know, I got 2 Noirs, and this one's out of the Russian River Valley. The other one's out of Mendocino, which, you know, both are they're not super far away from Santa Barbara from like a classical distance sense.
Yeah.
But Mendocino and the Russian River Valley, those are different than Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well,
different climates.
That Santa Barbara there, I think that AVA is like one of the smallest in California. It's like 2 miles by 15 miles or something like that. It's very, very small, but it does produce, and typically very expensive for our listeners. Typically I wouldn't say very expensive, but it's usually a very good bargain compared to like Willamette Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very, very good.
Producers,
valleys. Right. It is very good, but it's still, for most of the time you're going to be paying up $30 to $40 or more. And they have a lot of very small producers there too, which makes it difficult to find stuff from there sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Especially at like a Kroger in Virginia. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, hang on, I have hair in my mouth. Weird. This is so it's listed on the bottle as being $17.49, but they marked it down to $8.41. I did a little bit of research for price, and it looks like $10, kind of. But the difference is Mark West, apparently all they do is Pinot Noir.
Okay.
And they've only done Pinot Noir since maybe 96 or possibly 1978 when the winery started.
Oh, okay.
Now, I don't know if 78 they were just buying grapes, and now they definitely grow. So I don't know if like in 96 they switched over to growing their own. You know, I'm not totally sure. So, as the listeners may remember, Pinot Noir is one of my least favorite reds, because the flavor is too delicate for me most of the time. Right. So, you know, on a generally a $10 bottle, or, you know, and this one is a little different than the $10 one I found, because the other one was just California Pinot Noir, whereas this one is specific to the Russian River Valley. So this may be a little more expensive normally than what I was seeing, but I couldn't find all that much on it.
Yeah.
But the website from the manufacturer or the winery is pretty mobile friendly and very well done graphically website, especially for like a single wine producer. So like I'm betting it's probably owned as some larger winery, which is fine. But I opened it and then let it sit for like an hour, which, you know, I don't normally do. Mm-hmm. So I had a first sip of it, and it was very punchy up front and kind of aggressive. And unfortunately, this is like completely mellowed out. Like I get kind of a red wine smell. I don't get a huge amount of flavor on it. My mouth is very dry, but I may have also gotten very close to heat stroke today, because it was like 92, and I was trying to change the oil in my wife's car, and it wasn't going well because there's some sort of skid plate down there that my dad and I weren't expecting.
Oh, right.
You know, usually my dad and I with a car, like if it's not some electronic part, we can fix it pretty easily, but we were having a heck of a time. So like I got inside and I felt really awful and, you know, drank a bunch of water. And so like, I don't know if the dry mouth is from the wine or from that. But yeah, this has a very beautiful ruby color. Gonna give it another smell.
Oh, you're smelling. I looked this up on Vivino, and they're saying the average price paid is $20 or $20.99, $20.99.
Now, is this the Russian River one?
Yeah, yep. They have a whole bunch of different ones here, but it says you can buy it online right now for $13.99. But that's the vintage 2013. They don't have the vintage 2015 on the site.
Yeah. So I have the 2015 because I don't think I said that. Now,
Yeah.
mine is 15% alcohol.
Ooh, holy cow.
Yeah.
What is this one, I wonder? The 2013.
Yeah, I think you said it was 13.8 or so.
Well, the one that I'm drinking right now is 13.9. But I'm wondering what this vintage, their
2015.
the 2015 vintage. It doesn't say it on the site. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So overall, this is one of those ones where I'm pretty sure this is a pretty good bottle of Pinot Noir, but I don't think I have the palate for its subtlety when it's been open this long. And that's one of the things that like is kind of counterintuitive about reds, that need to be opened and allowed to air, is you can over air them depending on the wine type. And it definitely changes the flavor. So like that's one of those things where, you and I used to not do that at all, and now we both kind of recognize that more frequently, but I'll still slip back on a red and be like, oh no, I'm going to just drink it now. I just opened it.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes they're really, really good when they're first open, and sometimes they're really good when you've opened them and let them sit for a little while. Mm-hmm. It just depends on, I guess, what it is or what you like. That's the other thing too that I've been learning a lot is, I don't know how to say it exactly, but listening to, I guess, my own palate more instead of just being like, oh, well, this is what other people like. I should like this too. What
am I getting from this? And that's the thing. Like, so when you were talking about the flavor notes around when you were saying tobacco, so for the listeners who want to jog back to when that was, it's probably 10 minutes ago in the show, when you're talking about the tobacco flavor in yours after having had it open for a while, like I was sniffing mine at that point, trying to come up with a more elegant description, because that's one of the things that the listeners who, for a car, who doesn't like the classic episodes. One of the advantages of those episodes is you are very good at describing what you're tasting. And sometimes you couldn't necessarily get the specific word, but I would be able to get there with you, and it, like you can better put into word what I'm actually tasting.
Right.
So, it's one of those ones where like for 841, I'm definitely not disappointed. I've had it open for a while. I think a lot of the alcohol vapors have come off. Now that I'm smelling it, again, this is like less than 10, 20 minutes later. Like, I hate to say it, but I kind of get a red Kool-Aid smell.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Which I haven't had red Kool-Aid in
ages,
10 years at least. But, it's one of those ones that I find this really interesting that the winery only does Pinot Noirs. I really like that concept of kind of the hyper focus and hyper speciality, like the cellars that make Pinot, our go-to. They only do Cab Sauv. So it's really interesting to me to think that like you could specialize that much, because like a lot of the Virginia wineries, at least that I know of, they don't specialize at all, and they grow a wide variety. And here, like in the Russian River Valley, which isn't super, like, I'm not saying it's not good wine country, but it's not Sonoma.
Right. Well, and I think I've listened to either Wine for Normal People or a different podcast about the Russian River Valley, and it's one of those regions where you're right. It's not Sonoma, it's not Napa, and it was kind of pushed to the side and forgotten. And so they weren't growing great stuff there. But now there's a lot of people coming in and going like, no, this is good. This is good. They're just not growing the right thing here. And so they started taking out the Zinfandel, and they started taking out the Cab Sauv, and they started putting in stuff that is just better suited for that climate and better suited for that soil. Yeah.
So overall, if I, on a 5-point scale, I'd probably give it a 3.5. If you like Noir, and this is one of those ones that you have a particular affinity for, and you can want to reach out to us and give us a better idea of like what I'm doing wrong with it. Maybe it's, don't be super dehydrated.
Yeah. That probably helps, is making sure that you feel your best. So then you taste the best. That's always kind of a tough thing, especially when you're on a timeline like you are to come on and start talking about wine with me.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, normally what I've been trying to do is like not have my first glass be the one on the show, unless there's like, it's a gift from you or something like that. Right. Where it's like, no, I want you to have as much of that experience of me enjoying it for the first time as possible.
Right.
But with having not necessarily us having a more red focus as of late, but just myself having had more reds as of late. If you look at my what's left of my splash wine delivery, it's mainly the whites at this point.
Oh, good.
That's kind of the thing, is like I need to focus more on like I get more from whites than I do from reds, and I enjoy drinking reds in general.
Mm-hmm.
But from like a review standpoint, they're a little harder for me because it's like, oh,
right,
tastes like red wine. And you're sitting there like, oh, and I get the subtle hits of cherry and plum. And I'm like,
yeah,
it's sip, sip, sip. Yes, I do get those. How did I not get that before?
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, that's just one of those things is that I think, this is, I posted a picture on Instagram today, which you guys can follow, Tasting Anarchy on Instagram. It's mostly pictures of what I'm drinking. Actually, it's all pictures of what I'm drinking pretty much. And
because I don't text you pictures of
right. And I sort of lost my train of thought. I put a picture of this Albarino that I really like, and I opened another bottle of it last night because I don't normally drink whites, but I opened another bottle last night because I took that 1,000-foot view of Spanish wines. Elizabeth over at Wine for Normal People. Mm-hmm. She does those classes. You took one. I've taken a couple of them, and she did a Spanish wine classes yesterday.
Yeah, I got way too drunk on the first one. And could not follow the incredibly, I don't want it to sound bad, but like one of those things is about British people that are explaining stuff, and I know she's not British, so this is going somewhere, but I know you're not going to, but other people who are listening.
Oh, right.
Like, there's certain times when British people are explaining something where you're just like, this person sounds so pretentious. And then you finally start hearing what they're actually saying, and you're like, they're not pretentious at all. They're giving really good, useful, accurate, and well-presented information.
Right.
Elizabeth kind of had that at first for me, where I was like,
right.
Oh, she, wine for normal people. She's going to teach me about wine. I'm a normal person. Like, it's my own hang-up on what's going on. And then by the time I kind of started focusing, I was like, oh, you need to shut up in the head because this is really useful. Well, oh wait, you're way more hammered than you thought.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? The thing is too that I think you can probably go back in our episodes and see it was roughly around when I moved here and I started listening to her program. So probably about 9 months ago. And I remember saying on the show that I don't want this to sound like I'm being an asshole, but it says it's wine for normal people, and I have to take notes during the episodes and go look stuff up to read it. Mm-hmm. The thing is that while that is true, a lot of that is just because there's so much information in wine. And so you could probably go to the interviews that I've done, the one with Rowdy that I just did, or the one with Craig Camp, and you probably have to take notes on those. I had to take notes on those and go back and and read some of the stuff too. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean it's not accessible. And that's I think
exactly. And I think that's kind of like a Michael Malice thing. Yeah. It's like, I've never heard of you. It's like, well, I've never heard of you. Like, you're the one who's reached out to me.
Right.
But it's kind of like that Michael Malice thing. It's like, look, just because somebody has a weird way of speaking or something like that doesn't mean the information they're presenting isn't useful. But the same thing for here, where it's like, it is for normal people. She's presenting it in a laid back and informal fashion.
Yeah.
But it's well described, very knowledgeable, and well researched. And so, yes, there are times where you need to take notes and things like that. It's like listening to Tom and Bob.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Sometimes they'll toss off these comments about something, and it's like, wait, what? That's a strain of libertarian thought I've never even thought of to look into.
Right, exactly, and that's very true, and that's one of the cool things about wine is that, and why it appeals to, I think why it probably would appeal to a lot of libertarians as well is that, well, really just anybody who's kind of, to use an internet phrase, autistic like us, where you just become so obsessed because there's so much information, mm-hmm. and it's mm-hmm. not just the wine tastes and stuff like that, but it's the technique of making it, the history of the regions, actually one of the things I've been really harping on, and Victoria probably doesn't want to hear about it because I showed it to her and she's like, oh yeah, or what, that's nice, but I have this bottle that you and I are going to drink. I'm saving it for us because it's a very expensive Cabernet Sauvignon. The design of the bottle to me is so aesthetically pleasing. I'm just I'm just so happy to sit, hold this and look at it. They did such a good job on this bottle.
Well, it's like the peanut bottle.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much like that.
Very simple, but still so effective. And that's one of the things I really like about this Mark West bottle. It's a palish tin, palish paper, and it's got mainly an orange border. Their symbol is kind of I think it's supposed to be a grape leaf, but stylized. Okay. And gold. And then there's a grape, orange circle around it. Something about it feels very California to me.
Yeah.
But not like, oh, you're going to see a surfer going through, like,
Yeah.
the part of California that you and my wife are from.
Right,
like,
right.
But a little more classed up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because Sonoma is definitely a kind of hoity-toity. The Russian River Valley, it's, you know, just north. Like, Russian River Valley is just north of San Francisco, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Like, it's a amazing region of the country to go to, and to me, this bottle kind of evokes that.
Right. Okay.
Which
well,
is,
yeah.
Odd.
Yeah.
Like a bottle does that, but it's great.
Yeah. So I guess to sum up what we're talking about is we enjoy aesthetics, we enjoy wine. Sometimes it gets a little complicated, but hang in there because it does open up. It's really interesting. It's just a great world. And that's also kind of a roundabout way for us to plug Elizabeth at Wine for Normal People.
Yeah.
She's a wealth of information. She actually had a really super awesome libertarian-esque episode recently.
The episode that, you know, the class I took with her.
Yeah.
Like, she definitely kind of has this, like, libertarian feel to her.
Well, she had an economist on.
Oh, wow.
He's a wine economist, or that's one of his specialties. And he was going through the economics of regulation on wine. And like how incredibly devastating it is, and things like choice theory and things like that, where like he's like, well, these are if you do these different things. Well, actually, I think he was an economic journalist. I don't think he was an actual economist, but he was going through. He probably has a degree in economics. I'm not sure. He was very intelligent, and he's a British guy. But but he was going through and talking about. He's like, this is what we know happened when we started putting all these prohibitions on tobacco. And he's like, you really have to weigh the costs and the benefits. And then he was also going through like these various classes of people that are, he says they may not even realize it, but they're prohibitionists. And he was saying that they have a goal, and their goal is basically prohibition, but they realized that legal prohibition didn't work. And so now they want to do things like force you to change the label of your wine to show pictures of supposedly wine causing cancers, which there are none. But they were like, there's like one study that's a very, very poorly done study. And he goes through also the study and goes through all the flaws of the study. And it's like, there's actually no evidence at all that wine causes cancer. There's this one study that it may possibly contribute to breast cancer, but they like cut out huge segments of the testing population in order to get those results.
Well, it's like the idea that the Mediterranean diet, like, you know, is somehow good. And it's like, yeah, one group of people measured, and every statistical, you know, study that comes out that refutes it is buried. Where it's like, no, these diets are crap.
Right. Well, and that's kind of what he was talking about. Is he says there's overwhelming amounts of independent medical study with large sample sizes that shows that moderate wine drinking is actually very good for you and helps reduce your chances of getting cancer, as well as things like cardiovascular disease and other things. And then he says, on the other hand, then they cite this one study, and they're trying to use this study to get the government to force these new label changes on wine. And he's like, the study's completely flawed, and the sample size is tiny. It's like 100 people or something. and they cut out anybody in the study that was contrary to the results that they wanted. And so he kind of goes through this, and he goes like, this is not a uncommon thing. And he goes like, look, we know that cigarettes are bad for you, but a lot of the studies that they used to get a lot of the prohibition on cigarettes and the various labeling things on cigarettes are flawed studies. We have accurate studies that show that it's bad for you, but you don't have to hype up how bad they are for you. You know, but they did do a lot of this manipulation in the public, and he says this is the same thing with alcohol. Is that these are prohibitionists. They are typically a certain class of people with certain ideological beliefs that are part of their in-group preference. For lack of a better way of saying it, it's WASPs, who don't really see any sort of value in alcohol at all. And they have this crusade, and they are doing it, and they may have good intentions. They may truly believe in this stuff, but they lie. And they lie, and he says it's a method of gaining political power to. I actually really recommend people go. Maybe I'll look up what the episode was, because I'll put it in the show notes.
Should link. You definitely need to link.
Yeah, because it was it was one of the most informative episodes. It was about wine. The guy enjoys wine and stuff, but he kind of was going through it. Now, granted, he was much more moderate than you and me. He was like, well, look, we do need some labeling laws, but we don't need to put like pictures of breast cancer on the labels like we do for like cigarettes. And he actually, I think he kind of goes through that, and he's like, putting pictures of cancer on cigarettes is not effective, and it's
not been shown to be effective.
Yeah, it's not effective, and it's just a means of those people in political power gaining more power, and
it's just creating this other level of bureaucracy for no apparent reason.
Yeah, right. So it was a really great episode. I'll definitely link to it. Let me put a note in the show notes real quick to link to that episode. Actually, it would be great if I could reach out to him and have him on, because he was so interesting.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. But speaking of plugs, I believe we got our show, and only the one person they could remember the name of, got a wonderful plug on Peaceful Treason.
Yep, that's right.
Now, I don't hold it against them. I am very inactive on social media, given the fact that I have no social media, despite having started at least the main social media that most people know about us from. So yeah, the guys from Peaceful Treason, one of those things that I find very hard with established podcasts is dropping in.
Oh yeah.
Because we do it too, where there's a formula and a flow to the show. And it's like, wait, who's talking? Who are you guys? Why are you talking about us?
Yeah.
And then they're going to be at Childerberg. So I look very forward. Look forward to meeting them and getting to thank them in person for the very kind words. But it's one of those things where it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, that's also, I think for you, it's probably especially odd because a lot of times, I'll text you and be like, so-and-so said something. And you're like, who are they?
Yeah.
Or I'll be like, I'm going to go see so-and-so. And you're like, who is this person? And it's like, well, we interact with them all the time on Twitter. And it's like, oh, that's right. You're not on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, it's like every time you try to go on the Twitter and you look at it and you're like, I don't understand who's talking to who and how I view the response. Oh, because I'm not logged in, I can't see the chain in some logical way.
Right.
Yeah. So, I do it to myself, but that's one of those things where I think it's really interesting to see how I think about our show.
Right.
Compared to how other people view it. And, we Sounds Like Liberty, and I don't, and, it's not that they don't get plugged very often. I'm sure they do. But there are not as many libertarian podcasts out there that have a hyper focus.
Right.
And, our hyper focus is wine and laws that impact wine, but also generally how you can use what you see in the alcohol industry and how that applies to all society. And, Sounds Like Liberty, they're super hyper focused too, but Carr and them, they're, they have their own focus, but it's in a comedic way.
Right.
I won't say they're a comedy podcast, but comedy is a huge part of theirs.
Right.
And that's one of the things that's super fun about their show is it's this is just a really weird and interesting conversation between people that I could be friends with. Whereas some people might listen to our show and it's these guys really like wine. It's yes, we have a wine show. That's the point.
Right.
But, yeah. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, and I do like wine, but I'm getting way carried overboard on the amount of wine I buy. I'm taking a break, I think, for the rest of the summer on purchasing new things, unless it's for a class.
No, I think you should just take a break in general, because knowing you, when you create one exception, then there's all exceptions.
Right. Well, yeah. My next class isn't until July, I don't think, because she's doing a rosé class, which I'm actually very interested in, but it's for the European audience, so it's going to be at 2:00 in the afternoon, and I don't want to take time off. And
yeah, that's kind of hard, but I can understand especially for being a producer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
A content producer, and making a good portion of your living doing content production.
Yeah.
You do have to make adjustments like that. Right. Maybe one day, you and I will be able to functionally do things like that.
Yeah.
But at the moment, no. But so we've plugged Peaceful Treason, we've plugged Sounds Like Liberty, we've partially plugged the Friends Against Government podcast with Carr Campett and Birdarchy. Carr will be joining us on the aforementioned Childerberg.
That's right.
Peaceful Treason will be out there as well. I think, is it Rollo or is it Slappy who's going to be out?
Oh, Rollo from Rollo and Slappy will be there. I mean, Slappy's not coming. He's got kids. It's hard for him to travel. Although, you know about that.
Yeah, I do. Exactly.
Yeah. I guess Dino's coming down from Lubbock.
From the Dino Files.
Yeah, from the Dino Files.
And
Mr. Sue.
Many appearances on Friends Against Government. Mr.
Right.
Sue.
He also has he's got some other shows too, like one's about anime. I'm sure it's got some sort of liberty bent because he's a libertarian. I haven't listened to it yet. I know you're much more into anime than I am. I like a lot of it.
I wish I was more into it at times for the cultural aspects of just seeing a different culture, but yeah, I watch very little now.
Okay. Well, when you and I first met, I watched some and read some of the comics and stuff, and now I pretty much don't watch any of it or read any of it.
Correct. Same here.
Yeah, but I mean, I like it all still. It's just, I don't know.
Doesn't happen.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen. But so he's got that, and then Mr. Sue from the Pseudo-Lectual, which I always mispronounce as Pseudo-Intellectual, but it's Pseudo-Lectual podcast.
That's not mispronouncing.
Yeah.
That's just the wrong thing.
Right. So he'll be
apparently
there.
He feels very sorry for me because I can't.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Of the way I process music.
He's so into music that it's well, he's also a very good musician. He wrote, I don't know if you've heard it yet. He wrote the Ballad of the Road Toad, and so do you know the whole Road Toad thing?
Is it on Twitter?
It's on Twitter, but it's part of the Friends Against Government podcast. It's like it's a cryptid that Carr really doesn't like because I think that Bird actually made it up. I don't think it's real, or it might be real. I'm not sure, but it's a cryptid.
That's a cryptid, so somebody made it up.
Somebody made it up, right?
Right. Screw with them.
So, yeah.
But, I was also the one positing that Bird and Robbie Bernstein were the same persons for a while. So.
Oh, well, we should also plug Robbie the Fire, because next time I'm in New York, maybe he and I can get together and do something. I've been talking to him a little bit on Twitter. I'd like him to come out to Childeberg Dose, but we'll see how that all ends up working out.
I have a feeling, based on who's coming to Childeberg, which is Scott Horton, at least as far as we know.
Yes.
Childeberg Dose, I'm pretty sure Mark Claire's going to move heck and high water to get out there because he's going to be out there anyway.
Yeah.
So I think Mark will probably be somebody we'll get to see or at least have record, because it's next to the Libertarian Convention.
Right.
So yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. And I've got tentative dates if you want me to give them real quick. So the tentative dates are May 23rd through the 26th in 2020. So that's a Saturday through a Tuesday. And so it's going to be a longer event, mostly because I think the main stuff that we're going to be trying to do, like the big deal stuff, is going to be Sunday, Monday, and we're just going to be hanging out there Saturday, and then Tuesday we'll all be packing up and leaving.
Yeah. Saturday will be a setup day. Yeah. Getting people in and situated.
Yeah, and people who want to shuttle over to the LNC, because the LNC next year in 2020 is in Austin, and it's the 22nd through the 25th. So I wanted some overlap so that people had an option to come out after the festivities at the LNC, which I'm a big tent guy, more power to them. They do their thing. But if you're more of a anarchist or agorist or whatever, or just more of a party libertarian and would rather have fun hanging out with other libertarians than, whatever the heck goes on at the LNC, then you can come hang out with us, and we'd be more than happy to have you. We'd also be more than happy to have any podcasters that are going to the LNC, if they want to come and just chat with everybody afterwards about what happened, that's going to be cool too. So I know a lot of people are going to be out, but I don't want to spend too much time plugging that because we're running out of time.
We got to plug Childeberg first.
Yeah, we do.
So
we got to
June
Childeberg
8th and 9th, Lake Buchanan,
or Buchanan, one of the two.
Buchanan, we're not sure.
Yeah.
In the lovely Central Texas.
Yep.
We'll be out. We'll be having fun. We are having a wine van. Now, that's not a van that serves wine. That is a van that I will drive you to 3 wineries.
Yes.
The itinerary has been posted for the wine van.
Yeah. Do you want me to give you the wineries, or do you?
Yes.
Okay. So the wineries are Persesos Vineyard and Winery, Tornalox, which I've had several of the Tornalox wines, very, very good.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, and Fall Creek Vineyards. So those are the 3.
So with the wine van, please keep in mind these are wineries. These are professional businesses. This is not a bar where you're going to go out and get blitzstowed or whatever words you want to use to describe your epic consumption of alcohol. So save that for the public park next to the campsite that we will be at. But yes, we will be going out to enjoy some of the wineries. We will have plenty of people out who are having fun. Carr, Dino, as we've discussed, Brolo, Mr. Sue, the guys from Peaceful Treason, hopefully Scott Horton. Will be out at least
that's almost for sure. So
yeah,
at this point. But we'll, give him some leeway.
I can see some things happening in the realms of government action that may draw Scott away for very special and needed recording episodes. Hopefully nothing like that will happen and spoil our chance to at least get to shake his hand and thank him for all the hard work he does.
Yeah, get a cool picture.
Go ahead.
I said get a cool picture with him.
Yes. So after my brush with near sunstroke today, having been outside doing stupid stuff, please keep in mind if you are coming that while there is water available at the campsite, you should bring sunscreen, some sort of shade, lots and lots of your own water, and possibly a cooler full of ice.
Yes, yeah, because it is going to definitely be hot. And just sort of on that note, the wine van is full. So we've got all of the seats booked. But if you want to come with us to the wineries, I'm sure there's an opportunity for you to figure out carpooling with other people or to drink responsibly and tag along in your own vehicle. But please, please, please don't bring trouble on yourself or on us, and make sure that you are good to drive
and responsible.
Safe. Yes, yep. So we are drinkers. I regularly drink more than I should, and Mason and I have both had instances where we drove when we should not, and for the grace of God, we are still here to do the show with you.
Yes,
so
correct.
We can tell you from personal experience, just make sure that you're good to go, and if you're not, we can always drop people off at the campsite and then come back and get you.
Correct. Yes, believe me. If you are impaired and you are not safe to drive, we will not leave you out to dry, though we will be frustrated with you.
Yes,
but in a friendly frustration.
Right. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to our article. Though I think that was good Childeberg plugging.
Mm-hmm.
So this article I think is near and dear to my heart and to yours as well because we both love dogs.
Oh yes.
And the title is "In Wine Country, Dogs Are Sniffing Out Treats or Threats." I'm sorry. Dogs are sniffing out threats to $325 a bottle Cabernet Sauvignon. It's by Ellen McCoy, and I will go ahead and break down the summary. I thought it was a really cool article, and we can go ahead. Yeah.
What does it come out of?
Bloomberg,
something like that?
I think it's Bloomberg.
It's Bloomberg.
Yeah, Bloomberg. Yeah. Yeah, Bloomberg.
I meant to say decanter first.
Oh, yeah, no, it was I actually got this from the aggregator on Wine Business News, but it links you to, I always go to the Wine Business News just to see what's going on, and, but they link to external sites. So this was, because it's an aggregator. Yeah. So this is Ellen McCoy, and so here's the summary of the article. So it says, dogs' sense of smell is between 10,000 and 100,000 times better than humans. So due to this heightened sense of smell, dogs are being trained to sniff out the dreaded chemical TCA and TBA in oak staves destined to become barrels. So for those of you who don't know, because I didn't know, TCA and TCB are the cause of quote-unquote cork taint, which is a off flavor in wine that makes it taste kind of like wet cardboard. It is apparently not pleasant. I'm kind of curious to try something with cork taint to know what it tastes like.
All right, Jacob.
Yeah.
Go find the most recent Amazon box you have.
Yeah.
Put it under the sink. Put it in your mouth.
Right.
Take a sip of your wine.
Well, cork taint. That's probably what it's. But they were saying the TCA and TCB is such a strong chemical to humans that only a few drops in an Olympic-sized pool would be enough for you to be able to detect the smell and taste of it.
Oh, wow.
And so this does affect a lot of wine, and it's very difficult to track down, but apparently dogs are able to smell it. So the dogs are also being trained to smell other issues, contaminants from other issues with wood, also things from like plastic hoses, which if a plastic hose comes in contact with the wine juice, it can give an off flavor to it. If you're using pumps that have some sort of contamination in it, silicone bunges, which is I guess the big silicone plugs that they use to plug the top of wine barrels, those can get a contaminant on them, and it can give an off flavor. And then finding agents, which is like I think the agents that are used to clarify wine, some of those can get contaminated, and those will also cause a problem. So the dogs are being trained to smell out all of these contaminants that could be there. They have different dogs that do different things, but they go through and they sniff out all these things and do basically a certification process that these things are good. So back in 2018, Opus One, which I think you and I've done some articles about them. They're a very major player in Napa Valley. They make Cabernet Sauvignon. They sued their French barrel maker for $470,000, claiming that 10 barrels had been contaminated with TCA and it had damaged 590 gallons of their $325 a bottle Cabernet Sauvignon.
Wow.
So that's a big deal. And for obvious reasons, the barrel makers and the wineries and stuff want to make sure that they can kind of curb that. The dogs are also being trained to sniff out things in the fields that can cause contamination, such as bugs. Wasps apparently are a big problem in wine fields, so they'll sniff out wasps so that you can get rid of the wasps in whatever manner you want. Other types of bugs, I think it's phylloxera is the one that like eats the roots or whatever. Some of them can smell those, and so that you can make sure to try to like contain that if there's a problem. Now, these days they pretty much use American rootstock for everything, but in places like Chile, they still have old vines on European rootstock because they never got phylloxera down there. So places like that are very concerned that they may get an introduction of phylloxera, and it will kill very large percentage of their vine. I mean, like back in, I guess it was like the late 1700s when phylloxera hit France, they were losing something like 80%, 90% of their vines to this bug. And they also are being trained to sniff out certain types of mold and rot that are difficult to detect otherwise and can cause a lot of off flavors. The article's longer than that. It has a lot more information that's very interesting. One of the things that I thought was really great, though, about this is that some of these dogs are retrained dogs that used to be trained to sniff out drugs. And you know how we feel about the drug war. And for those who are listening, we are anti-drug war.
Correct.
And I always feel bad for the dogs that have to do that work. And because it's just like, they don't know any better, but they're basically ruining people's lives. But they're just, they're trained to sniff drugs. That's what they do. But now they can save people from bad wine instead of putting people in jail for, transporting nose candy.
Yeah, or whatever else.
Yeah, whatever.
So this makes me wonder. So, like, pigs are really smart too.
Yeah.
So I wondered, like, about creating a competitor using pigs.
Yeah, they probably would be really good at it, and probably in the fields it would be a little bit difficult because one of the reasons they don't use pigs to sniff truffles is because pigs will eat truffles.
Well, they used to use pigs to sniff them. Yeah, because the pig has an inherent desire to get to it because it desires it as food, whereas the dog does not. Right.
So, but I know they stopped using them a lot because that sometimes the pigs will get the truffles and you won't get them. And you're talking about, truffles are hundreds of dollars a pound.
Yeah, but like that's the thing is like if you're training them to like sniff out wasps and they're like able to eat wasps that you don't have to deal with.
Yeah, then I guess that's true. But you don't want them. But you don't want them to be eating the grapes. Is what I guess is what I'm kind of getting at. But I guess if you have if you have the smaller pigs that can't reach the grapes, then maybe that's fine.
Well, also, but like a well-fed pig is not necessarily it's not a shark.
That's true.
It's not even sharks, like that's the thing is like that's a misnomer about sharks. They don't just devour things. Like they're very sensitive about what they eat.
Yeah.
Like, and pigs goats are actually pretty sensitive what they eat too, but like most animals like that, like there's very few animals that just eat anything.
Right.
Like a seagull is kind of one of those things where it's like it'll eat anything.
That's why you find them full of plastic and stuff. So
yeah, but like that's the thing is like so like I wonder if you could like create a competing edge with pigs, but also like so TCA it's a chemical.
Yeah.
So like I wonder where the TCA originates. So
well, I guess it's like according to the I didn't read a huge amount about where TCA and TBA come from, but it's a contaminant that's just in wood. I don't know if it's not. I don't think it's from like cutting them down because it's also in cork, and that's why it gets the name cork taint.
Yeah. So, but that's what I was going to say is like I wonder if you could like say have a service that could genetically test trees that are destined to become oak barrels.
Oh yeah, huh?
And then so that way, like if you could come up with like whatever the genetic marker is for the production of the TCA chemical, because if it's that strong, like if this is something that is like a genetic, clearly wine would have never become popular if this chemical, well, basically either people never cared about the taste of TCA before, or it's very rare in the trees themselves. So if you could pre-screen the trees and or say like sell tree stock that is genetically incapable of producing the TCA chemical, then you could grow like, because that's one of the things like sustainable forage management. Like if you're going to be producing wine barrels out of oak and things like that, you could be sustainably producing these trees. And if you knew they were all free of this,
Yeah.
Like, hey, like we're using a genetically sourced material that is free of this.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Speaking of different types of oak, I don't know if I already did an episode on this, but I had a wine recently that was aged in Russian oak. Have you ever had one like that?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, it's interesting because I always hear American oak or French oak.
Yes.
And apparently there's a guy in California who is a botanist or an arborist. And he is also into wine. And so he went out looking for like different types of oak, and he sourced these oak trees out of the Carpathians or maybe the Caucasus. I don't remember where, but he found these oak trees in Russia that he was like, this has got the chemical compounds we want to add the types of flavors that we're looking for. And so now he started making wine barrels out of this Russian oak that's out there, which I thought was super interesting. I don't think I've actually talked about it. I think I just recalled it now, and I think I was going to save it for like a mini, so maybe people can look forward to that later.
Do you remember anything different or special about it, or?
No, because it was aged in a combination of French and Russian, so gotcha. I didn't notice anything. I think it actually might have been a Syrah. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah, I think it was a Syrah, and it was aged in Russian oak. I thought it was super interesting.
Now here's a quick second for one of our classic tangents.
Okay.
So everybody who's like, oh, like they're trying to look at the like marginal like benefits to like, you know, Bob and Tom did an episode on tariffs last week for Contra Krugman, and you know, like Bob was talking about like, you know, some measures where you could say like tariffs aren't necessarily bad using certain metrics because you're kind of going to a certain argument to begin with.
Right.
But that's one of the things that like what's so inherently damaging about like tariffs and government manipulation. Because like, what if like these Russian oaks were the perfect wine barrels and like the Russians could be producing them cheaper,
right? Possibly
Possibly more efficiently because they have, you know, those massive Russian forests where they could do selective management that haven't already been damaged. So they could, you know, use really good efficient techniques. And then, but no, because we're, you know, bring all these sanctions against the Russians for supposedly meddling in our elections and all this other nonsense. And
right.
It's like, no, this is like a cause of like where free trade yet again. It's like, look, no, these guys are like, yeah, they have all the things we want in this, and it's limiting the market for no reason.
Okay, I looked it up. It's in the Caucasus. That's where the Russian oak comes from. Yeah. So
maybe we can get it from Georgia because, you know, apparently
That's
they're going to join NATO or some nonsense.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe. Yeah, I wonder if that's. It says it says right here. It comes from the Caucasus in the Republic of Adigua. I have no idea where the hell this place is. Let me look.
It's in Russia.
Yeah. Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's some of the Caucasus regions in Russia have the republic in the name.
Oh, it is part of the Russian Federation. It says, and it's like right next to Crimea and right above Georgia. So it's like right between Georgia and Crimea.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So I guess they're getting them there. So, you know, maybe we could get it from Georgia if they join up NATO. Maybe they've got the same stuff there, and they could make really good wine barrels.
Yeah, but like that's the thing is like, you know, but or we could just, you know, not be a-holes and
that's true.
Just freely trade with Russia, and then like, you know, the power of like free commerce would allow the import of our ideas on top of you know, us being able to trade with them.
Yeah. That would be. So apparently it's very new. They were introduced in 1996. So
Ooh.
That said, they've only been using them for a little while.
Yeah.
So very interesting. Well, that's a great place to close, I think, and we are.
I think so as well.
Out of time. So you got work tomorrow, or you got the day off?
I have the day off.
Ooh, nice. Me too.
Yeah.
All right.
So you can follow us on Tasting Anarchy at Twitter, tastinganarchy.com, tastinganarchy@gmail.com. Schilderberg. It's an annual event that's happened once.
Yeah.
Or is happening once.
Right.
Where we will have libertarians. It is the Pork Fest of the South.
Right.
So, and it is the non-Contra Cruise.
Right. That's right. Oh man, I forgot that we were doing that. Maybe I should incorporate that somehow into the waiting for or dreaming of Childeberg Dose t-shirts.
I have an idea for that that I will not say on air.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let me know because I'm still working on the art for that, and so for those of you who are waiting with bated breath, I have a new T-shirt for In Between Childeberg 1 and Childeberg Dose.
More tie-dye.
Yeah, more tie-dye, exactly. So keep your eye out for that. So I think that's pretty much it. Anything else, Mason?
Not from me. Stay free, everybody.
All right, stay free.
drinking half gallons and calling for more. Drinking wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Hoy! Drink at me. Oh, give me some of that slop. Oh, pass that bottle to me. If you want to get along in Peterstown, buy some wine and pass it around. Age runs up to 49. All them cats, they love sweet wine. Drinking wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Hoy! Wine, wine, wine. Elderberry. Wine, wine, wine. Cherry, cherry. Wine, wine, wine. Blackberry. Wine, wine, wine. Port and sherry. Wine, wine, wine. Oh, pass that bottle to me. Now down on Gill Street at Willie's Den, he wasn't selling but American gin. One soldier wanted a bottle of wine. He hipped that cat for $1 and a dime. Drinking wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Pass that bottle to me. Now I got a nickel, have you got a dime? Let's get together and get some wine. Somebody's fifth and somebody's fourth. When you get together, you're doing things smart. Drinking wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine. Wine, sporty, you to drink wine.